Hey guys, I'm James. This is Courtney. And if you don't know, well, I'll tell you, this is the Noise Date Night. Welcome to another riveting edition. This week we'll be reviewing Respect, the video biography of Aretha Franklin, Queen of Soul. And before we do that, we'll be talking about our baseball date night. And we'll do a preview into next week's movie. But this week we went to 2 minor league baseball games up in Lake Elsinore for the Lake Elsinore Storm. And what were your thoughts on that, babe?
I mean, I like baseball, and I like watching baseball. So
I couldn't tell by
there
your
was
Dodgers
an
shirt.
abnormal amount of bees
There was
at
at the
game,
second
so
game.
that was kind of annoying. But other than that, it was really fun to see like live sports.
Yeah.
You know,
It was
they won
solid.
both times, so that was good.
Yeah, it was a solid atmosphere. First night was Friday night. It was Faith and Family night. And then we came back because the next night was military appreciation and military got in free, so we figured we'd make another appearance. But it was solid baseball. They're not like I don't know how to say it. All the other minor league stadiums I've been to have like had outfield seating or like have been bigger, so it's one of the smaller ones that I've been to. But I thought it was solid. There was no like Memphis Redbirds or Corpus Christi Hooks, but I mean, this up there is a solid experience. It was a nice stadium too. It was really clean.
Yeah, it was super clean. No complaints. I mean, the second game obviously we had better seats, so that was kind of cool. And yeah, it was fun overall. And I won a free T-shirt, so that was good.
Oh, and then in between the first game and the second game, 3 guys got called up to the next level. We're like sitting there like, wait. So at each game, the like MC guy like will ask questions at random to the crowd, and one of them is like, "Can you name one player on the team?" And I was wondering why that question would be so hard, but then I remembered that like these guys move around a lot. That starting lineup changes, but it was nice to see a bunch of guys that are like just trying to get to the pros or get to the majors, not the pros.
They are pro.
They are pros. But yeah, I'd highly recommend it if you've got the time and they're in town. Go see the Lake Elsinore Storm.
Yeah, it was really fun. This poor kid got a ball
Oh my gosh!
shot to the back.
And then they got mad at us because we were like, "Yo, maybe if you taught your kid how to catch a ball, he wouldn't have got hit in the back."
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Let me clarify. All the adults looked up at a fly ball and looked and said, "Oh, that's not coming anywhere near us." And all of them looked down, and clearly the ball was headed right for them and landed on the kid that was sitting in the middle of all the adults.
When this kid did everything he's taught in school, he braced for impact, and it turns out impact was directly at like the upper third of his spine. The kid was in tears. It was a sight to see.
It was really sad, but also it's like you don't go to a baseball game and put your head down when a ball's hit in the air.
Kid didn't even have a glove. He wasn't prepared.
No, but they could have at least shielded him if they were really concerned or moved.
This wasn't like a meme moment where like you have that one picture of that dad who like throws his hand out and catches the bat that's coming at his kid. No, this kid got hit straight up.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. His scream was really intense.
Yeah, one of the
but
more
he was
memorable
fine
moments.
like 5 seconds later.
Yeah.
Totally walked up and was fine. But yeah.
I think he was trying to get free stuff.
It looked like all he got was an ice pack. Poor kid.
No.
And the ball.
But anyways, so let's get into it. So this week we watched Respect. It's a movie biography of the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. And I mean, I'm going to be real. I thought it was a solid movie. I definitely liked the way that they portrayed her life. Some might argue one way or another about it, but I felt like they went just to the right extent to display what they were trying to get at. And I mean, I haven't read a biography on Aretha Franklin, so I don't like know her life really well, but I feel like the story was told well. I didn't think there was any disrespect to anyone that didn't deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I feel like they set out to tell a story and they did it well.
Yeah, no, I thought it was pretty good. Definitely solid. I think it. She obviously had like a really intense life that we. I mean, I didn't know anything about personally, unless I guess you are like a super fan and you read all these things about her. So that was like interesting to see just behind her person and who she is and how she became that way. But I thought that it was a good amount of drama and good amount of intensity, but also like some of the issues are really hard to stomach if you have to watch it all the way through of like what actually happens. But I think the way that they did it and executed it, it made it just more appealing to just everybody. So if you're on the fence, definitely go see it.
Exactly, yeah, and it's actually it's streaming on Apple TV. Um, and this one had Jennifer Hudson, right? Was
Mm-hmm.
Aretha Franklin.
Yeah.
You've got Marlon Wayans in one of his more serious roles. I felt like you wouldn't think knowing his work that he could do well, but he did. You've
Like for
got
a second, I forgot it was him
yeah, exactly.
because
You
he
got
was so good.
Forrest Whitaker.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of big names in this one, and
Mm-hmm.
they all played their roles really well.
Yeah, it was awesome.
But at this point, what I'll tell you is, as a sign of respect for you, respecting your freedom to choose, what I'll say is that there's a spoiler alert in effect. So if you haven't read her biography, or if you just don't know a lot about Aretha and you really want to be surprised by this movie, um, this is where I would stop listening to this podcast. And with that in mind, I guess we'll step into our plot description. This week we'll have Courtney run us down on it because she's so eloquent and intelligent, and I just love hearing her talk. So,
Thanks.
babe, how did it go? How was the movie, just plot wise?
All right, plot wise, it was really good. Starts out with Aretha as a young child. She already has like a talent for singing and kind of how that's displayed and shown through her family. Her parents are separated. She goes through a trauma at a young age, insinuating that she is either molested or raped. She becomes pregnant at a young age and gives birth. But then it flashes forward to her, adult years, young adult years. She's only like 18 at this point, where
Yeah, and
she,
that was one thing I had trouble keeping up with, like how old she was at points. But
yeah, I had to like look up her actual life because I kind of wanted a more accurate like depiction of how old she was in these scenarios. And so like actually realizing that she was 18 instead of like they could have did like a title card that was like 18.
exactly, and they showed the year, but like there was a
Yeah,
point where they said
if
they
you're
said
really good
late
at
on in the
math.
movie they're like, "You're 25," and I was like, "She's 25 at that
Mm-hmm.
point."
Yeah, so thinking about how young she was going through those things, is really crazy and just so sad, but also so empowering that she, pushes through. She starts singing for her dad at church pretty regularly. She starts traveling with him. He's pretty much like her manager, and he tries to get her. He gets her a record deal, so she signs, and she's making like records that they want her to make. They want her to sing, and she's basically just doing a lot of like glorified covers. That's what it seems like. Nothing too
Exactly, yeah,
original. She's not getting any hits. Um, she ends up getting with Marlon Wayans' character
yeah.
and marrying him and makes him her manager. And so she leaves her dad, she leaves her label, and she goes to a different label. And she wants to just basically have her own freedom to do her own music. And that's when she starts really excelling musically. But personally, like her marriage is awful. I mean, he's abusive,
Yeah, and
he's degrading, disrespectful.
in a way, he's kind of holding it together. He's fighting off her demons, but at what cost? I mean, in some way,
Or she's just used to suppressing all of her emotions
and
and
he's helping with
issues.
that. At some
Well,
like
she
his
may or
his
may not be used to that because she's just used to like pushing things under the rug because of all the trauma she's been through in her whole life.
oh yeah, and she has to really face her
That can
trauma
be
when
more
she
of like
leaves
a
him.
psychological,
Yeah.
evaluation later on. Not a part of the plot, babe.
Okay, all right.
All right. So then after that, after she leaves her dad, she starts to become pretty successful musically. She starts writing all of her major hits that you guys all know, like Respect. And what are some other ones, babe?
Freedom,
Freedom. They
freedom.
probably don't want us to sing.
And
And then you
then
make me
you
feel,
make me feel
yeah, like a
like
natural woman. And then every morning I wake up, say a little prayer for you. So like all the major ones that you love. Obviously Jennifer sings them and she sings
grace.
amazing. So which is awesome to hear. So she kind of goes through this whole phase of like going from one hit to the next. This is how they portray it in the movie, anyways. all the while she's still with her husband. She's still going against her family in that regard, where they're always kind of like telling her to like get out. She doesn't have to be like that. But it turns out like her dad, even though he's a pastor, he seems to have like some dark past as well too. It kind of is just more insinuated. It's not really shown,
Yeah.
but there's like reasons why him and his wife are separated. That Jennifer Hudson, who plays Aretha, why Aretha kind of falls back into those patterns as well, or probably why it's like more common for her to be around people like that.
Exactly.
She finally sticks up for herself and gets rid of her husband, dumps him, and then ends up kind of like dating in a way her new tour manager, because she goes on like a world tour. She has another kid. Well, she has two more kids, one with her marriage and then one with her tour manager. So at this point, she actually has 4 kids. So she had 2 before 18, which she was really, really young.
When this is where she really starts to spiral, though.
Yeah, and so when she's dating her manager, she's going on her world tour. Her sisters are singing backup for her. Her brother's working for her. She's pretty big at this point. She's well known. She's Grammy nominated, Grammy winner. She's touring all over, and she starts to spiral personally.
Becomes hard to work with.
Relying on alcohol.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But another like side, like paralleled stories, like her personal life that you see, where she's like an activist. She's really fighting for rights for African Americans, because at this point they're still segregated. They're still going through, in the South, they're still, fighting for their rights to be free, basically, to be able to be treated fairly. And so she comes alongside Martin Luther King, and she does a lot of like the marches with him, and she's at a lot of the rallies, and she's an ally with him, and he's friends with her dad, sorry. And so just kind of watching that part of her and seeing her just do things that are bigger than her and outside of her was really cool to see that she was a part of that as well. And then she also got to sing at his funeral too, which is really cool. So as she's spiraling, after the funeral, that's where she sees her dad, and she's like talking to him, and he's kind of having a moment as well of just being like really sad, and they're upset about the movement, just kind of like, one of their own just got killed, point blank, got shot. So now they're just kind of like, what's gonna happen to us? What's gonna happen? He was kind of like our leader. He was, the one that was making progress for them, and so he kind of is really sad. And she's like telling him and assuring him like, you can do the same thing. Like, you were friends with him. We're all going for the same goal. Like, we need to keep his legacy alive. We need to keep going for that. We need to do it for our people. All the while, the dad is like telling her that you have to have your faith. You have to go back to your roots, and to be back at, where she all started, her foundation, which ultimately was God. And so she decides to go back to her roots. She decides to go back to church, and she decides to make a gospel album. And that ends up being her number 1 selling album of all time, which is pretty cool. And so she pretty much goes back to what she knew and what she was raised on, which was believing in God and relying on him for her strength. And she sings Amazing Grace at the very end, and it's pretty powerful and it's awesome. She's got the whole choir there. She's at a church setting. And then they kind of just give you like a brief overview of like, all her successes after that. So it was pretty cool to see. I thought it was a really good movie. And like I said, nothing that could have been like overly graphic, in her beginning parts, or even like the abuse scenes. Some of those issues are really like hard to watch, especially with like when it has to do with children.
They came at them the right way. So like getting more into like moments of the movie that we found to be, or like more critiquing the movie and moving past the plot. So when we look back on the movie, like I said, we've gotten through the plot. What are like some big takeaways from the movie itself in terms of like, I don't know, big things that stuck out to you about the movie?
Like I really loved how the coming of the song Respect came together, and how they kind of like gave that background to us. How she kind of added her own personal flair to it by adding like, like her nickname in there, Riri, and then she also added like, her phrase that she says with her mom in there. And so I thought that was like pretty cool, even though it wasn't like a song that was technically originally written by her, but it's definitely made famous by her.
No, yeah, and I agree, because these movies are all about the build up to those songs, because those songs You've heard them 100 times, and the story has to be compelling to make you think about that song in a different
Yeah.
light. And I feel like we had learned a lot about Aretha to that point,
Mm-hmm.
and even throughout afterwards, there was stuff peppered in that like made you feel a different, a sense of a deeper respect
Mm-hmm.
for Aretha's struggle.
Yeah,
So
definitely. I thought that was a
I
good
felt
moment.
that.
I think definitely when she goes back into the church and starts to record her gospel album, I think that's definitely like a, from a faith standpoint, I think it's really important to show that, since that was a part of her life, and since, that was like her best-selling album to this date, which is pretty awesome. How she does need to go back to her roots of being, in church, of being close to God, having a relationship with him. And so I think that was really important to include in her story. And I think it's important to understand too, like, if you're a person of faith, having that foundation is key.
Exactly. And then getting into that point of like details they included versus details they didn't. There's some things that don't need to be explicitly shown, and we found that early on in the movie with the way that they depicted her childhood struggle of like teenage pregnancy through rape. They didn't make us dwell on that, but they
Mm-hmm.
like depicted it, and they made sure that it was known that that's what caused it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they took that on in the right way, especially keeping in mind that I wouldn't step out and call it a family movie, but like I wouldn't like they didn't make it up to where I'm like, oh, I'd never take my kids to see that. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think the age cutoff was not like so high because of like how they depicted her life.
Yeah, and just like being able to watch those types of scenes is very difficult to do and very hard to stomach, especially like
Exactly.
if you know people that have gone through it or if you've gone through things like that. So this was like a good way to show that it happened without actually showing any graphic detail.
Exactly. And there's like some very heavy topics in this movie,
Mm-hmm.
like alcoholism, domestic abuse, and the domestic abuse they were a little more open and showing,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like they weren't like overtly like you know showing an ongoing boxing match between her and her husband. It
Yeah,
was like
oftentimes it would jump to like a future scene, and then
exactly,
she'd like be in some type of trance or some type of moment of being taken back to that time where he would hit her or abuse her, and so that's how you would kind of like feel it with her in that sense.
exactly.
So
No, and I think I touched on this earlier on, but Marlon Wayans' performance in this movie,
mm-hmm.
I mean, and he wasn't even I think in the grand scheme this movie's like 2.5 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
In the grand scheme of it, he wasn't even really in it that long. Like he
Still
was, I
gonna
think
get at least an hour.
he took up about half of it, but like relatively, that's like Aretha Franklin was in it the whole time, and there was other
Yeah, I mean,
characters
I
that
believe they were only married. Oh, what was it? They weren't married for very long, but they were married for most of like her major albums that came out, most of her major singles that came out. That's pretty much the bulk of their marriage was during
exactly,
those times.
yeah. And so, um, there was that Forrest Whitaker. I thought was really solid.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's definitely like just right to play the father.
Yeah.
Um, I also like the way that they depicted they this movie falls into a category where you could very easily just go, "Hey, Aretha Franklin was friends with Martin Luther King Jr. Let's really overanalyze that." And
Yeah.
it was like that they were just that he was friends with her father. They interacted. She was really interested in being a part of the revolution, the fight for civil rights, and that was as deep as it went. Like
Mm-hmm.
they didn't embellish the fact that MLK, major historical figure, was in this movie. It was like it was done up enough. And one
Yeah.
thing to me also was that the actor that played MLK, unless you knew it was MLK, wasn't just like I wasn't like, oh, that guy looks exactly like Martin Luther King. Like
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it was more or less like to highlight the fact that she did stuff outside of the norm that we know her as, like a singer, you know what I mean, or an entertainer.
exactly,
She actually, was concerned with her community. She was concerned about, her rights. She was concerned about her friends. She was concerned about, making sure that everyone was treated equally. So it was cool to see her do something outside of herself, bigger than herself, and contribute in that way. So.
exactly. And with that, do you have anything else to say? Any other major points to bring up about the movie before we go into?
I mean, Jennifer Hudson just has a phenomenal voice. So if you just like good
My
singing, she
goodness.
sings amazing. And just hearing her voice, I don't know. I get emotional when I hear good singing because it just
Yeah.
like you can really feel it. And so hearing like the Freedom song, after she leaves her husband, and that's when she performs it. It's like so powerful and so fun.
When she
And
locks out,
I
he's in the
love it.
back of the room. She looks at him and goes, "I'm free." I was like,
Freedom.
"Ooh."
Yeah, I was like, yeah. So that was really cool. Um, and then they have Aretha, real Aretha, singing at the end in the credits, and
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
kind of emotional because she just passed away not too long ago. So yeah, you just really appreciate her and her music, and for pushing through all the things that she had to overcome to get to where she was. And I mean, it's really inspiring, and I hope it inspires other people who are going through hard things and wanting to give up, or going through hard things and blaming themselves. And she wasn't, hiding her talent. She was sharing that with the world. So thank you, Aretha, for doing that for us.
No doubt. Um, on that note, you know what time it is. We're about to give our scores for this movie. Now, before we give our scores for this movie, how did the public view this movie? Now, this movie so far, it's been in theaters a little longer than most movies that we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
The budget on the movie was 55 million roundabout, and
Uh-huh.
they've pulled about 23 million,
Okay.
so a little under the budget.
Yeah.
So monetarily, if we're just judging off of that, not an amazing movie, but critics and fans alike in general seemed to really like it.
Yeah, most critics did like it. It has a 63 Metascore, so that's in the green. There were some critics that didn't like it and just kind of dubbed it as like a playlist. You go from song to song, and you kind of get like a little mini story each song, basically. Which I guess in retrospect, it could be seen like that. Because again, it wasn't as like intense as some of these situations could have been portrayed. And so I think because the intensity wasn't as prevalent, I feel like people may have felt a little like cheaped out on that feeling. But again, I feel like some of those situations are just so intense that it's like, do we really need to see everything, like all the gore, all the intensity, the evilness? Like, I don't know. Maybe our society is just a little bit jaded and likes to see it, all the nitty gritty. But if you can get past that and it's a little bit more surface, how it's just depicted, I think overall the general consensus is that it's a good movie. It's a story that it needs to be told because a lot of people like her music and appreciate Aretha. So I think it's good to know more about her as a person and her legacy and who she was and what she left behind for us and her music and her faith. And yeah, there were some people that didn't like it. They thought it was, again, just not as like even an intense Oscar worthy type of film.
I mean, I feel like if you're following up Bohemian Rhapsody, which is like one of our more recent movies that we can compare to this.
Yeah, or like
Some
Rocket
people,
Man.
yeah, Rocket Man, those kind of movies.
Ray.
Yeah, they kind of give us the blueprint, and some of them went a little more intense or like told the stories in a way that was a little different.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people thought that Rocket Man was like more of a musical, whereas Bohemian Rhapsody was deeper into the story, and then
Yeah, I feel like obviously Freddie Mercury had like a really dark past and had a lot of
and you felt his struggle.
yeah,
And
you
so
did.
when you
And
build up to the Wimbledon performance, you get that.
oh yeah, you're like crying with him. You want him to succeed. You want him to be successful. You want him to be happy. You want him to live and be healthy.
Yeah.
And with Jennifer Hudson playing Aretha, like I know a lot of people did comment like on the way that she spoke. I've never really heard like older, I don't know, interviews or anything like that from Aretha, so I can't really say personally like if that was accurate or not. But people were like really annoyed that she was really so soft spoken. But I felt like she was a lot more timid, which is ironic because the song Respect like is so
It's a
empowering
demand
and
for
it's
respect.
it's
Yeah, I
very
agree.
demanding. It's very out there. It's like
Well, there was irony there
confident.
too with
Yeah.
the way that she was being treated by her husband at the time when
Mhm.
she released Respect.
Mhm. Yeah, because she wasn't being respected.
No.
And she wasn't confident in who she was, and she wasn't comfortable in branching out on her own as a songwriter, as a musician. And I just think like yeah, I think that kind of contributed to that, and I see why she was acting the way that she did, Jennifer Hudson. But yeah, some people didn't like that. So
Yeah, I know. But on that note, you know how it goes on a scale of 1 to 7. I'll let you go first, babe. I've got my score in mind. Now to recap, we've done Free Guy. I gave it a 5. You gave it a 5.5, and we've done Reminiscence, which I gave a 4.5, and you gave it a 4. So
I think that was flopped, but it's okay.
no, you well.
Oh,
Oh no,
was
it
I
was
lower than you?
no. Yeah, because you rated Free Guy better than me, and I rated Reminiscence better than you.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So let's see how it goes here.
Okay.
So you go first. Ladies first. I'm
Okay.
nothing but a gentleman here.
Out of 7, I would say, oof, this is a tough one because I get where all my Oscar worthy people are coming from, because you get those nitty gritty dramas and you get into the deep and the dark of a person and really see them for who they are. And, because this was a little bit more surface level, it did come off a little, I don't know, melancholy, so to speak, in really intense situations. So I'd give it, just because of that, I'd go for like maybe 5.5, 6.
All right. Yeah. No, I'm sitting at a 5. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like with what we were given prior to it, one I think one of the big things working against it is that everyone was well aware of Freddie Mercury's story, and so
Yeah.
when you go into it, the little details that they threw in for Freddie Mercury's story were like sprinkles on top of what people already knew about his life.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like not as many people were educated on the struggles that Aretha Franklin went through.
Yeah, I think because she was in a earlier era where
So
women just, typically were just quieter in general and held back a lot more because they weren't given a voice as freely as like in the 70s when Freddie Mercury was
exactly,
around. So,
and so both of them had merit to their struggles. But I
yes.
mean, I definitely feel like a lot of people saw Respect as a good story,
Mm-hmm.
and
It
they
is.
saw other movies as stories that they knew more like better, that had more visibility to them.
Yeah, I think that the visual aspect of it wasn't as executed as it could be. It wasn't as visually appealing in a sense where it wasn't like, beautifully drawn out or anything like that. But if you like good music, if you like Jennifer Hudson, if you like knowing about someone's life, someone as cool as Aretha, I definitely would recommend seeing it. It's a good movie. And
Uh,
also, if you just don't want to have a super intense movie, I think it's a good one to watch.
it's
So
solid,
I think
yeah.
it appeals to a wider audience.
No, and I think the theater was vital to the experience. This is not
Mm-hmm.
one where I would just be like, yeah, just watch it on Apple TV and see. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, seeing it on the big screen, I loved like the songs and just the magnitude of
The
that.
sound
And
system, it was
yeah,
all
oh
there.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. You
100%.
could sing along and
Yeah, but that brings us into our next segment. All right, so we've talked about our baseball date night. We've talked about Respect, a video biography of Aretha Franklin, and now we come to a preview of what we'll be getting into next week. Which I don't know how many of you are well versed in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but
the MCU.
those that know, Marvel has had a few experimental shots. They've not missed. They're most notable so far being Guardians of the Galaxy, little known, one of a fan favorite now. And now we step into their next shot in the dark here, following up, Ant-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy, which is Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings. Now I am not well versed in his story at all, so all I've got is from the previews. But if you know me, you know superhero movies are my jam. There's no such thing as a bad superhero movie, just a superhero movie that I'd like to see less than the other superhero movies. But that's just my take on it. What are people saying? Early impressions. Movie comes out
Yeah, it
this
seems
Friday.
like a lot of critics have seen it already. It has a 71 Metascore, which is even higher than Respect, so it's in the green. A lot of people gave it a really high rating. People like it. People think that there's a lot of room for growth with this franchise and this series. Maybe even some spin-offs are being predicted. I mean, there's like one that gave it a 38, but one out of like 32, that's pretty good.
Well, and
So
one of the
yeah.
stories that will be surrounding this movie so far,
Mm-hmm.
in the realm of social justice and controversy, is that one of the leads in the movie, Aquafina, I hope I'm saying that correctly,
Yes.
is known to have gained most of her acclaim and fame on YouTube, through use of what the kids nowadays call a black scent, which is where she raps, and it sounds like she's trying to rip off what is a black person's voice, while doing it, is what is being said in the news articles now. And so there's some people calling to protest the movie because of her presence in it. My experience with the Marvel Universe is that controversy is not one to deter people, but that is a storyline that people are talking about on the internet right now. But I'm excited to see this movie because, we saw Black Widow when it came out, and before that there was a really long lull. So I'm glad that the Marvel stream is flowing again. And I know that Courtney is just as excited because this wasn't her week to pick the movie, which means that she's got to be super excited that I'm picking the movie.
I can't tell if you're being sarcastic. You know, I've seen every superhero movie before I even met you. I actually watched all the Thor movies before you.
Before me, yeah, no.
I don't know what you're trying to say here.
I'm not implying that you don't like them. I'm just saying that it is my week to pick the movie.
I went to Spider-Man at midnight with Tobey Maguire.
I was not able to do that when it happened, but I did watch them. Tobey Maguire's a good Spider-Man, and I can't wait till Spider-Man No Way Home. I'm so excited. But on that note, that's next week's movie. So
I'm excited.
It's
the same director from Just Mercy.
I've been.
If you've seen that,
James.
Judging by your face, you haven't, but
I've not seen Just Mercy. Is that the one with Michael B. Jordan?
Yes, it's so good.
Okay,
I watched it with my parents.
I have to watch it because I really liked the not Rocky, but what's the Creed movies. The Creed movies were really good with Adonis Creed.
Okay, yeah.
And I really like the Rocky movies.
So, okay, I'm trying to follow your train of thoughts. You're going from Michael B. Jordan to Creed. Is that what you're saying? Because
Michael B. Jordan was
But Michael
Creed.
B. Jordan originally, from Friday Night Lights. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but I never watched Friday Night Lights. Or we could go to Black Panther, R.I.P. Chadwick Boseman. Just keep it in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Black Panther.
But anyways, I've been James Roy, and this has, as always, been Courtney.
That's me.
The most beautiful girl ever in the history of ever. Aww. And like, comment, subscribe, and tell your friends about us. And tune in next Thursday, for our review of Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
And the 10 Rings.
Keep the movie theaters alive,
Keep
go
it
to
going.
the movies.
Yeah.
Enjoy a date.
Down with direct stream, up with the movies. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening to us talk about movies, because we like doing it, and we hope you liked it as much as we liked recording it. But until next time, we'll see you around.